intro take. I'm going to show how I made this alarm clock for myself that automatically starts on my computer. It runs as a script. So this is a script wake up. It starts up this dashboard with the time and the current temp and the high temp. And then it also starts a random song from this Spotify playlist using this Spotify player app. So the first piece I'll take you through about how it works is just the dashboard portion, which is a web app called Wake Up. It's a React app, and like basically it is this way because that's what I do for a living and what I'm most used to. And it actually runs just on GitHub pages because that was the easiest way. I need to open it in a browser through a script, which I'll also show. And I just knew this was a dependable way. It would have this URL and I could count on that. Yeah, it uses the OpenMedio API for weather, which worked well. The response was a little different than I was expecting at first, but it's fine. It's not a big deal. Yeah, and that worked pretty well. And then for the background, I kind of had in mind, so this is a background color dependent on the temperature, and it's actually a radial gradient. You know, it's tempting to try and do something with the high and the current temp to drive your gradient, but there's really not enough difference much of the time, so it's more just a hue shift on the outside of that gradient. And I'd like to return to the gradient. It's a little intense to have this this red maybe in the morning, but sort of like to carve out that as another piece of the process to like figure out a good gradient system. Maybe I can make a little thing that like shows a bunch of different temperature combos, and that would be a fun way to do that. But that's really the extent of the web app, and then everything else is kind of how you spin that up. The next piece that's important to how this all works is the script that kicks off both the web app in this full screen window and also starts the playlist. So first we've got to check to make sure Spotify Player is running. And yeah, Spotify Player is this cool terminal interface for Spotify, and it also has command line interface for Spotify. So that was kind of the easiest to use its commands to run the playlist that I could think of. Probably could have authenticated through the web app itself, but I wanted to stay out of Spotify web app authentication world. But this is a little fiddly part. It checks if Spotify player is running, and if not, starts it in the Ghosty terminal emulator. And it has a sleep because it maybe needs to wait a second after that, which I don't love. But usually Spotify player is running. So usually it doesn't need to do that. Then I have some things for Neri, which is the tiling window manager I use. It does this cool thing where windows tile off to the side in a workspace. And it's also pretty scriptable. It's kind of new and under active development, so I don't know that it has all the scripting that some of the other tiling window managers have, but it also has a lot more than you'd get on Mac or Windows, so it's great. But here we're just focusing this monitor, HDMI A1, so using the output, which stays constant. I'll talk about the overall computer setup in a sec. And then Workspace 255, just the way workspaces work, that just guarantees it's on a new workspace. Then it opens up Google Chrome. Some fun command line flags in here. user data dir equals temp. That gets you in a new session, because sometimes if it tries to run in a current session and you already have Windows open, it can get a little weird. I think especially around kiosk, which is another flag that gets you it in full screen mode without any Chrome. So that's the combo of the kiosk and the app flag that says the wake up URL. Password store basic is a GNOME keyring fun little Linux issue that I'm mainly just like ignoring, making sure I don't get a weird pop-up about it when I open this. So it's nice. I think the kiosk stuff is cool, but it always seems like it's kind of on the way out. I don't think you can do a kiosk flag in Mac, but it's nice. You can run. It seems so elemental, but it's really nice. You can run a full screen dashboard on a window, and it's this combo of scripting and the window manager allowing me to do that. Then we get into Spotify player, starting this playlist, which is Ambient Essentials. Seems good for now. Maybe I'll switch it out later. In the ideal world, I'd probably have my own Bandcamp bot MP3s and shuffle through that with a non-Spotify interface, but this is what we're doing for now. Fun little quirk was getting it to play a random song. I don't think I can just say play a random song. Instead, I start the playlist, I wait 3 seconds, then I check if shuffle's on, because there's a command to toggle shuffle, but not just turn it. So I have to check if it's off, then I turn shuffle on, then I do next track, and that's how I get random song from the playlist. Kind of the usual little quirks you have to deal with in this stuff. Some commands actually don't need this comment, because I did, with the help of an LLM, figure out the scripts, the commands to automatically get some of my audio outputs. Because of how the system's set up, there's kind of 2 ways the audio could be going to these speakers, but I wanted to set the audio of the speakers, and I am doing that because I don't want to get in a situation where I, for some reason, like turn the audio way down the night before and then the wake up song doesn't work. Then just the last Spotify stuff that I already talked about, set the volume to that, so I know I can depend on that, or set the volume to 80, so I know I can depend on it always being the same, and shift to that next track. And that's really the script. So I've gone through this script, and now it's kind of these last, like, almost physical and OS level pieces that make this work. So yeah, to explain the setup more too, down here, this all runs on a mini PC, and it's sort of running as a server, also a dog appearance. So that solves one nice problem about, so I got the script. I need to run the script at 6 a.m. In a lot of cases, I'd need to like wake up the computer because it's probably gone to sleep. This computer doesn't go to sleep, so that problem solved. That's a big help. Yeah, so it's scheduling the script. One thing I do is turn off the monitors. I think I could run like a dpms command to do this, but I have these little just smart plugs that I mainly got to run my coffee machine on a timer, because and it's worked well for that. So I have that down in the cord box, and then with my phone I can, there's a little Kabasa, I think, smart app, but I can turn those on and off, and I can also set the schedule to 6 a.m. so they'll automatically turn on at that time, and that works well. You know, maybe in the ideal world, I'd do something with, yeah, it would all be in the script or all run off the computer, but I feel like I've dealt with enough of this stuff to know that, like, this is not a bad compromise. Yeah. So the last thing, and the thing that was a bit of a headache for me, was getting this script to actually run at 6 a.m. And part of that is I run NixOS, Linux as my OS, and it's mostly great. But I'd looked at this before, and I just don't know. You know, we normally do a cron job, and then it sounds like the way to do it now is a systemd timer. And I tried to do a systemd timer. I think I left them commented out. With a wake up service, and got part of the way there, but was having a lot of trouble. So the script I have obviously works if I just run it. Was having trouble with the path not being in there, and then I just started putting my whole normal path in a script. It's that, and I don't know this stuff super well, but that the like systemd script is running this in sort of an isolated environment, and it doesn't have the path. And then it also, I think the path was mostly working, but I didn't have the environment variables. And so then that meant it couldn't connect to do the NIRI commands because it didn't have the socket name environment variable, which presumably I could pass through. But somewhere along the line, I took a walk and realized I could do a probably hackier, definitely a hackier solution, but that will work fine, which is I use Waybar as a status bar, and it most of its modules are just shell scripts that run on a timer. Like the clock is just a shell script that gets the current time and prints it out. So now I just have a, I guess that is a slightly like separate check shell script that mainly runs that wake up script, but checks if the current time is 6 a.m. And does it on an interval of a minute, and it's just like a non-displayed module at the top of my wake up bar. So that was the solution. It worked yesterday. I can't imagine why it would not work. Again, I think the big issue would be is the computer went to sleep, but this computer doesn't go to sleep. So that's an easy one. So maybe I'll return the systemd timers. I know it'd be good if I got a better handle on all of that. You know, maybe I'll do more of a deep dive into how Linux internals work to understand that. But at this point, I have my working alarm clock, and hopefully I'll continue to do it and do some more with the radial gradient, and I'm sure I'll have great peaceful mornings now and always know the temperature.